We're talking about heresy buttons.
When don't we talk about heresy?
Hello, welcome to Cross-Examine. We're on our last thing of budding theology. Calvinism v. Arminianism v. Molinism, and similar antics.
Molinists, Arminianists, and heretics.
Oh.
Exactly.
So we're actually going to do two letters tonight, our last two, because we touched on the first one a lot previously. So we're going to do a bit of that and then the last one. So we're basing it off of the Calvinists, and we're, Arminian and Molinist are their respective letters. So we're doing Irresistible Grace and Perseverance of the Saints. I said it.
You said it.
Yay, I'm so proud.
Good. Anyways, we're doing those. So I only think it's right Christina starts. So I guess you can start with just the Irresistible Grace if you want. You can do both. It's up to you.
Okay, I'll start with Irresistible Grace because I think Matt has some stuff to say about that subject. I just want to talk about this one by going back through all of Tulip, because really this one doesn't seem to make any sense unless you connect it to the other letters. So Irresistible Grace means that when God calls you, you can't resist that call. You are irresistibly drawn to him. Tulip, T was total depravity, basically meaning that everyone is bad, no one is good. We're all totally bad. There's no good in us apart from God. The U was unconditional election. God chooses who is saved. He chooses his elect, is the word that's typically used. Then we go to limited atonement, which means that God's grace is sufficient for everybody, but it is only realized in the elect. And so looking at those three, it naturally leads into irresistible grace, because if we are totally depraved, there is no good in us apart from God. That means we cannot choose God on our own. He has to call us. And based on unconditional election, he does choose us unconditionally. And so when he calls us, it's an irresistible call. Which is good, because if it was left up to us, probably most of the time we would try to resist it as much as humanly possible because of our depravity.
Yeah.
Basic.
Yeah, and with
basic summary of irresistible grace there.
Yeah, and I think I'll probably talk more about the Molinists. They have overcoming grace instead.
Okay.
I was telling them a little bit before about this that gets a bit into semantics with it, because essentially the Molinistic view is pretty much the same, except they're specifying that God's not like kidnapping people and forcing them to become Christians. It's almost like we still have that action of choosing, of letting ourselves be saved. Again, a few episodes back, I gave the example of someone who's being rushed to the ER in an ambulance. They can do nothing to contribute positively to that situation, but they could make it worse. They could refuse and make the ambulance drop them off in the middle of the street, and they would do it. And then they would be doomed. It's really just specify. It's like very similar to the Calvinistic point of view, except it's specifying that people can. It says people can say no, in the sense that people can resist the call they're feeling on them.
But the call is very, very strong. Is that kind of what you're saying? Like, it's a really, really strong call, and so it's unlikely that they will say no, but that choice is still there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much.
It sounds kind of like, to expand on your paramedic metaphor there, which I like. Kind of like, if you tell a paramedic or an EMT or whatever, no, I'm going to refuse treatment, the first thing they do isn't, okay, and hand you the paper. It's, are you really sure you want to do that? And they ask you that for like 30 to 45 minutes. Then they might hand you the paper to sign. I mean, they're hammering at home. Oh, you're going to die now, dude. Come on.
I think the real-world application of that would look like when you see those altar calls, whether it be a movie or you've seen it in real churches, altar calls, and you have that person who's very, like, they feel the conviction, like, I need to go up, I really need to do this, but then they just don't do it. I think that would be a kind of a real world comparison.
Yeah.
It's like.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Okay. The only thing I would say to that is, for it's kind of like it's all an outside force working on you to save you, whereas when God is calling you, he's acting on your heart and changing you from the inside. So it is affecting your thoughts and your desires as well, not just something physical where you could just be like, no, I don't want that. He's actually working inside you so that that is something that you want. That's what the grace is doing. It's making you want that, since we in our depravity don't want it on our own.
Yeah, and that probably could go back to Molinistic view on depravity, which.
Yeah.
Radical depravity. Yeah, that's what it was. Which gives them like
radical, but not total.
Yeah, it's like a limited view of free will. Like, you have enough where you can say yes to the workings of the Spirit, but you have no concept of good on your own.
Okay.
Yeah. That's one of the ones where it starts.
That sounds like Calvinism.
Yeah. But that one's the one that's slightly different from the Calvinism versus like very like semantics.
Right.
Just basically, God is not kidnapping people.
I can agree with that. I don't think he's kidnapping people.
Some Calvinists do.
Okay, hey, that's fair. That's some do. Not gonna lie.
Calvinists. All right, so with Arminianism, as we've gone through with the past 4 videos, and I hate to say this, but there's always 2 ways to do it. Stupid Arminians. Well, okay. There's classical Arminians and then modern Arminians. Okay. Let's see. Because I'm going to get these backwards because I always do and I have to fix it later. Okay. So, the more modern one, they do spontaneous faith. And the way that they phrase that is that faith is a gift of God, but it's brought about by a human choice. Basically, like, there's really no good explanation for this, but this is the best I came up with. A mom and a kid go into a Walmart or whatever, and the kid wouldn't get candy if they don't ask for it. They're like, "Hey, Mom, can I have a chocolate bar?" And Mom's like, "Yeah." But if they didn't ask, she wouldn't have done it. It's like you don't receive because you don't ask. And in fact, they use that verse to back it up, which is kind of silly. Which everything that I've said about modern Arminianism in all 4 of these videos has been incredibly weird and incredibly silly and comical to me. Now, the one that makes more sense, and it's phrased weird just so it would be an S for the acrostic here, but sedentary grace. So this is the classical Arminianist idea that God gives everybody grace. Here's your grace. It's a box. Take your box. It's just going to sit on the shelf. You're going to, the box can just sit there. The gift is inside it forever, but you're not going to use it unless you open the box. And that's kind of the more classical idea with a very simplified, what do you call it? Metaphor.
As we go through these, I'm realizing that like Calvinism, like intellectually and theologically makes the most sense to me, but like Arminianism always seems more practical. like as you're living it out, because like Calvinism, it's really easy to get into that predestination. Oh, well, I couldn't help that I did that. It was in God's plan. Whereas if you
that deliberate
if you think more like an Arminian, it's like it forces you to put the responsibility on yourself which I think is a good thing. So I find that very interesting.
I think a lot, like, because the point Matt made, like I like it. It sounds really nice. I think with Arminianism, when we go back to depravity, that's like the big holdup with all three. Like, because Arminianism's big thing is like our ability to choose God, and then
Right.
go back to depravity, which is this like total depravity. Calvinism, which is you do not have the power at all to choose because you will naturally choose bad.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I heard there's a pastor friend of mine named Chase. And Chase kind of described it to me one time as this. He's a very big Calvinist guy. Cool guy, though, oddly enough. But I'm just messing with you. But the way he did it was, the way he said was, if humans are not totally depraved, Calvinism is wrong. It hinges on.
Oh, yeah.
But if humans are totally depraved, then there's no other option except Calvinism, which is cool.
Yeah.
About it, in that it all kind of hinges on one thing, and that's it. I mean, that's the end of it. Which is one of the reasons I really like Molinism of all three of these. It has that very in-depth thought process side about this is how we read this, and this is the original language, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it can also be very practical in how you live it out and show it to other people. It's really cool. But Malloy, you're right. Calvinists tend to, at least in my experience, tend to be less teaching others and more like, I'm going to study this and find out, like, the nerds and all. And Arminians are just like, yay, I'm going to give the world a hug. And Molinists just laugh at both and move on about their lives doing mission work. So,
which I think we need a balance of both of those, which is one of the things that really irritates me about most Calvinists is I don't like the way they live.
That is my biggest problem with Calvinism is how they treat others because of it. And that's very much.
That's a legitimate complaint. There are some Calvinists who are, I know a church that teaches, they say they're not Calvinist, but that's basically what they teach. And they'll do community events, but they won't witness to anybody. They'll have hot dog cookouts or something, and they'll go out and they'll interact with people in the community, but there's no witnessing, there's no sharing the gospel, there's no talking about church. It's just hanging out. I'm what's the point?
And that's a problem. But another problem that I see, and this is, again, a very big generalization, nothing on you, Christina, nothing on Patrick, or any.
Oh, yeah, no, go ahead.
No, generalize Patrick.
But, well, nobody cares about Patrick. This much.
Love you.
On a backdrop where you can see it. Yeah, the world's tiniest heart. I can't even do it. It's so small. There we go. But the biggest problem I have is that you run into such a large population of what most we'll call them moderate Calvinists like yourself would call Calvinists. But that's the basis of Calvinism becomes the hyper Calvinist if they are fundamentally Calvinists, for all 5 points. The most famous example, and again, this doesn't reflect on you, is Westboro Baptist Church. We all know about them. I mean, that's a name that I cringe almost every time I hear it.
Oh yeah.
Or I daydream about them picketing my funeral, which will be actually A+. I'm hoping Westboro, if you watch this, you are invited to picket my funeral whenever it is. You can picket my wedding. You can picket whatever you want to. I'll even feed you. Come on. It's great. Because it would mean that I made it properly, the way that I'd like to be remembered. I want to be.
You got the right kind of attention.
Yeah. They say that no press is truly really bad press, and when it comes to Westboro Baptist, I would say so. But anyway, they are. I mean, for the Calvinism you see in everyday churches and in the local church, they are the prime example. And I hate to say that because I go to a Calvinist church. But they are the prime example of what's wrong with, maybe not the idea of Calvinism, but with Calvinists themselves.
Culture.
That is
Right.
mainstream Calvinism. Again, there's just like there's psycho Christians and then normal Christians and then psycho like the other way, Rob Bell. You've got like you and Patrick, or you've got Westboro Baptist, or you've got the other side like my church, which are Calvinists. Sorry, Dr. Coker, your church ain't Calvinist. My bad.
And that's like one of the reasons, like, I don't hide the fact that I hold to Calvinism. Like, if someone asks me, I'm going to be honest about it. But I don't go around teaching. I teach children's church, and like, I'm not going to touch that. It's not necessary. You're
not old enough to understand, so you don't,
Right, but even if I was teaching like teenagers or even adults, I probably would never bring it up unless it was brought up by a student, just because I don't see it as necessarily a primary doctrine as long as the major tenets of salvation are still taught, which I think we can still all agree on, even though we have different views. So but, it's just not something I willingly bring up because there are so many negative connotations that go along with it.
Right. And I would say I have touched on it some and fully intend to really in-depth teach on it some more with my youth group. Unfortunately, it's a small youth group, and like everybody who comes is middle school, so they're not quite to where I can really dig into it and understand some of it yet.
Yeah.
We have done some interesting things like credo baptism versus pedo baptism. We're not really done with that yet either, but that's kind of an interesting thing. But yeah, I would agree. And until they're, at least, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 years old, there's no way they're going to understand some of this. I'm 22, almost 23. I don't understand half of this.
I started learning it when I was in seminary. What was that 4 years ago? So I was like, 23 something, 24. And I started learning about Calvinism and stuff, and went right over my head. I think I got a C in that class because we talked a lot about Calvinism and Arminianism, and I was just like, I don't know what's going on. That's the only class I ever got a C in seminary too.
I'd never heard of Calvinism until I was in college. Not once.
Calvinism.
I'd also never heard the words altar call till I was in college. So that one's different. I've seen them, but I never knew what they were called.
We just call it invitation.
We don't close service until someone comes up for altar call.
That's what we always called it, was like the invitation. And nobody in my Baptist church, when I was little and actually went to a traditional church, nobody would ever go up front. They just didn't. So
you just keep calling until someone comes. Like, we are not closing service until someone finds Jesus here.
They were Southern Baptist. They had to get to the buffet.
I mean, my church is Southern Baptist, and we all go up to the altar. So not all of us, a bunch of us.
Yeah, but are you like Northern Southern Baptist, or are you like Southern Baptist? Because I know they're the same denomination, but
we're Arkansas Southern Baptist.
They're what?
Arkansas Southern Baptist.
Okay, no, that's acceptable.
But we're probably the least Southern Baptists.
The least Southern of the Southern Baptists.
The least Southern Baptist that you can possibly be and still be Southern Baptist.
No, Southern Baptist.
We're not even a Southern Baptist church. Like, it's not in our name.
No, the Southern Baptists are in Canada too. That's the least Southern Baptists.
That's fair. It's actually community church. It's not Southern Baptist Church. It's community church.
Call those.
But we're part of the Southern Baptist Convention, so it counts.
Community sounds nice. It sounds like we're just a community. We don't have a team. We're just a community.
We don't have a pastor. We're just a community.
That's not how it works.
No.
Anyways, by the way, should we do the last letter?
Let's do the last letter. I'm excited.
Yeah, let's do the last letter.
My favorite letter.
And so should start it out, I guess, because
Did you say I'm starting it?
What?
Did you say I'm starting it?
Yeah, let the heretic start.
Perseverance.
This is probably the least heretical and the most accepted tenet of Calvinism of all of them. Even not Calvinists, except this one. That makes them 1 point Calvinists. So
actually, of like 90% of the classical Arminius that I found, most of them are 4-point Arminius, and this is the point they capitulate on.
Actually, honestly, when I was taking church history, the only reason Arminius put this in here was because it opposed Calvin's point. That's the only reason it's in Arminianism is because Calvin held the opposing view.
I would disagree with that, strictly from the viewpoint of the fact that Arminius wasn't that big of a jerk. I mean, apparently he was kind of a jerk. So was John Calvin. Hey,
everyone's a little bit of a jerk.
None of them are as bad as John Wesley, though.
Anyway, I'm explaining it. You don't even know what it is yet. I mean, you do, but our viewers might not. They probably do, but they might not.
Them viewers not important.
It is Perseverance of the Saints. I had to think about it for a second. Perseverance of the Saints, which basically you've probably heard it said, "Once saved, always saved."
YOLO
is the common way. No, it's not YOLO. It's literally not YOLO because you die and go to heaven and you're still living. Like
still one life.
You live twice
forever.
You die and then you resurrect. So that's like two of them. Anyway, basically, once you're saved, you cannot lose your salvation. It's not difficult. It's not a difficult concept.
Yeah.
Even if you sin, Jesus' sacrifice was sufficient for past, present, and future sins. Covers everything. So if you sin, you don't have to get resaved because it's already been paid for.
Yeah. See, there's always in all the extremes of this kind of stuff, there's one thing that I always wonder: how do they explain this to children? When it comes to Calvinism, the question is with whichever one that says not everybody goes to heaven. How do you explain that God chose before the foundation of the world for some people, possibly you, little child, to die and go to hell forever?
I don't.
Exactly.
I don't.
Now, the Arminian version that I go, what the heck, people?
It's like how you don't tell kids about David cutting off the Goliath's head and showing it to everybody.
Actually, I do, and they love it.
Yeah, that's like their favorite part of the story.
We actually had to make like a Goliath piece of paper that they colored, and they put the head on it with a brad, and they had like a plastic or like a paper sword.
You guys are going to dash the little one's heads.
That is awesome.
Psalms.
What?
Dash the little one's heads against the rocks in the Psalms. Yes.
I taught them that one too. They thought it was funny. They started throwing rocks at each other.
Yeah, no, I haven't gotten to that one yet.
But
that's a really fun one. Okay, so that was the main, and I'll just say this one briefly, and I'll jump back on topic. But we did that one in college. It was basically talking about, is the entire Bible inerrant, no errors, no human positions at all? Then how do you explain this psalm where David is saying, dash the little one's skulls against the rocks? And Jesus.
That's easy. It's poetry, not a command.
Yeah. It was just the debate.
It wasn't Deuteronomy a command.
Anyways, yeah, so the Molinistic...
So was don't eat bacon.
The Molinistic
Leviticus
is eternal life. Roses.
Same author.
Stop it. Stop it, Moses. Stop.
Stupid Moses. Won't let us eat bacon? What the heck, man?
No more. We're doing eternal life now.
Yay!
Or maybe not, because once saved, always saved? Question mark.
So the Molinistic view. So this particular writer was funny because he's like, I grew up Pentecostal, so I have trouble dealing with the idea that people can't lose salvation. So I was like, I see where you're coming from. So what he was, again, this is essentially just the Calvinist position, but they're specifying. So eternal life, you don't lose your salvation because God, through his middle knowledge, knows not only who is going to fall away, but then who is going to come back later. Yes. So
he only elects you if he knows you're going to come back by the time you're dead.
Yes.
Awesome. Like it.
Just make it till you're on your deathbed, man. Just don't die instantly. Get time.
Just pray on your deathbed.
Which I'm concerned about that. But anyways, but that was it. It was really just specifying that yes, if people do fall away, God knows if they're going to come back though, and that explains that. So I was just like, well, it's essentially the same thing, but whatever. Anyways, it's there for you.
So this particular point of Arminianism is my what the heck, guys, for this soteriological view. That's definitely not the tab I tried to click. Thank you. Okay, so again, for once, finally, thank the Lord, we have classical Arminianism, modern Arminianism. They happen to have the same point here. Wow. I don't know.
We have to listen to him explain one.
They called it, the modern people, the weirdos, call it yieldedness of the saints for some reason.
Yes. Called it what?
Yieldedness of the saints.
Yieldedness. That's not a word. I don't think that's a word.
I don't think it's a word either. The classical have an actual word, and it's yieldable justification. I like that.
Imagine using that in a sentence. Like, his yieldedness was admirable. I'm trying to think how to use that in a sentence.
He answered her with yieldedness, and then like a dialogue. I don't even know that that's a word. Sounds like an Urban Dictionary thing. I
don't think it is.
Not dealing with that.
I'll look it up.
So yieldable. I wouldn't look that up. Yieldable justification.
Not Urban Dictionary. Yieldedness.
Oh, my bad. They both say basically that the people who are saved can fall from grace by doing stupid crap. So, like, hey, I'm saved. Oh no, I punched a guy on the subway. Okay, you're still going to hell. From this actually spouts not that this necessarily is a heresy, because I can understand where in the Bible they get this. It's talking about, in Peter's letters, talking about people falling away, etc., etc. It's really bad. It talks mostly about it in Corinthians, if I remember correctly. But it does sprout heresy in the whole, if you're not baptized before you die, you go to hell. Even if you're, lack of a better term, you've prayed the prayer, heavy quotation marks there, and you're saved or elected, whatever. But you're driving to church on Sunday morning to get baptized, and you die from a wreck right in front of the church parking lot, you're still going to hell. That's not okay. And that actually comes from this particular point is where people get this. So, what the hell, Arminians? How do you explain this to your children? Hey, you lied to mommy, you're going to hell.
Didn't make the cut.
Just didn't make it.
That just sounds like a terrifying way to live. Like,
yeah, it is.
What if I accidentally sinned, like in my mind or something, and I don't know, didn't think about it?
Well, see, that takes us back to, just as this one takes you back to total depravity to irresistible grace. This point for Arminians refers back to the first one, at least in the case of the crazy modern people, which is deliberate sin. So there's no such thing as an accidental sin. So whereas like a Calvinist would go, oh, I looked at that woman and had a bad thought, let me, oh, my bad. Let me, pray and apologize or whatever. Arminians are like, no, if you didn't want to have that bad thought, you wouldn't have had that bad thought. It was done on purpose. You did
That's
it on
just
purpose.
Terrifying. That's just terrifying.
Style.
That is actually similar to me from like my experiences chatting with Orthodox Christians, where I've met some who, like this one guy I was talking to, talked about how they believe in the ability to achieve total regeneration on earth. Like while you're still here, you can become totally regenerated where you never sin at all. And so because that's possible, you are 100% responsible if you sin. It's not just your nature, it's just you.
Like, I just think if Paul couldn't do it, what makes me think I can do it?
Right? I mean, Elijah
I was always talking about how awful he was.
I mean, I look at Elijah. He had the faith to call down fire from heaven, and he still sins. Moses.
Yeah.
He still made fun of people. Though I have to say, telling somebody to scream louder because God's probably taking a poop, best insult in the last.
I take notes.
I think
When I'm
was
dealing with witch doctors, I take notes from Elijah.
Say what?
When I deal with witch doctors, I take notes from Elijah.
That's where I get my insults from, is Elijah.
It's biblical.
Insults, that is.
Biblical insults.
Kind of hypocritical though when you send some bears after someone when they insult you.
Wasn't that Elisha?
That was Elisha.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's okay then.
That was Elijah's student.
Now wait.
Right.
Yeah, to bring up this important question again, did God know Elisha was going to do that and had those she-bears ready there? Or did God instantaneously create she-bears the moment Elisha commanded them to attack?
I think he had them ready because I'm a Calvinist.
More importantly, why did the Bible assume their gender as she-bears?
Because that's what they were.
Because they're angry. I'm scared of
They're angry and attacking people.
She-bears are scarier than man-bears.
Heck yeah.
Bears and man-bears.
Man-bears, maybe.
Man-bear pigs.
Man-bears are too lazy to attack some kids.
A she-bear, no, a she-bear is just raised.
Like the men of almost every race or species. Species. Well, species. Yeah, you're right.
I just like to point out that none of those kids died. They were just mauled and severely injured. All of them.
They were dead. Did they not die?
No,
I mean, eventually they died, right?
They were just all mauled and crippled.
Like when they eventually died. I can't just go like over to Israel or Turkey somewhere and there they are, still mauled.
They're still alive.
That'd be kind of dope, though. Maybe I should insult the prophets a few times.
You get mauled by bears, but you also are granted eternal life so that you can continue being mauled by bears.
No, you're not continuing.
For eternity.
You never heal.
Oh, I think you are. Every few weeks or so, you get mauled by a bear.
You get the Prometheus treatment.
But on to the topic we were just on, I think one of the crazy pressures is like with Moses. Like, literally, he disqualified himself from the promised land because he struck a rock rather than speaking to it, which the rock was symbolic of Jesus.
Yeah.
Still, like that casual of a sin that any of us would have thought, like, that's not a sin. No, that disqualified him.
Right.
And so to be able to say that I am capable of never sinning again right now.
That just seems incredibly arrogant to say that.
I mean, Moses was the closest thing to God on earth before Jesus. Like, he wasn't, but like he was his representation was God on earth, with Aaron being his prophet.
Right.
So the fact that he couldn't definitely means we can't.
Well, I mean, if you ask the Mormons, Melchizedek never sinned.
About what?
Why would I ask the Mormons that?
Why would you ask them?
Like, I'm going to now. I'm going to go up to a Mormon and be like, hey, did Melchizedek ever sin? That's what I'm going to do now. And
the answer that I got was yes, but not after he became a prophet. He was sinless after he became a prophet.
Just like,
never a prophet.
Oh.
Just like how Jesus was Satan's brother.
Yeah, that.
Jehovah's Witnesses.
No, that is Mormonism, actually.
Oh, yeah. No. We got
so weird.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Jehovah's Witnesses, Jesus is Michael the Archangel. He apparently decided to stop singing Holy, 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 and he came down for a bit. And, yeah.
Wait, say that again?
Michael decided to stop singing Holy, Holy, Holy for a while and came down for a bit and hung out with us. It was like, hey, dying for your sins, and yeah.
So Jesus is Michael?
Yes, in Witness Theology, Jehovah's Witness Theology, yes.
Okay. So, getting back on topic, I thought of something else that I wanted to say.
What the hell, guys?
What?
Jehovah's Witnesses. Every theology has a what the hell, guys. That is a what the hell, guys, for the Jehovah's Witness.
Anyway, as I was saying before I was interrupted, back on topic of the perseverance of the saints, I don't want to say you got to be careful with this theology, because a lot of people will try to use this theology like as a comfort where it shouldn't be. I don't like, we should try to comfort people, but we shouldn't give people false comfort. I know a lot of people will have like say, this is something I hear a lot. They'll have children who were raised in church. They grew up and, left the church, turned their back on God, whatever. And so they'll point to the verse in Proverbs that says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is older, he will not depart from it. Sort of as a once saved, always saved. If they were saved when they were a kid, said the prayer, got baptized, all that stuff. Even if they backslid when they're adult, they're still going to heaven. Or don't worry, they're going to come back to the church because the Bible says they will. And I think it's important to be careful not to take this this theology somewhere where it shouldn't go. Because yes, we do say once saved, always saved, but we don't always know who's saved. Someone can act like they're saved for years, and it just never really stuck. You got the parable of the sower who spreads the seeds, and like some fell on the ground and looked like it was about to sprout up, but the roots weren't deep, and so it dried up. So we can't know who is saved and who isn't, and I think it's important not to offer people false hope where there is none.
Yeah, I think generally we emphasize more not on salvation through works, obviously, but being aware of what people's fruit is. And if people have been bad fruit, we should be like, that's bad.
Right, because even though we don't believe in faith by works, the Bible does say that faith without works is dead. So, our works aren't what save us, but it is the evidence that we are saved.
And I like the way you put that. A lot of people get that verse backwards. Faith without works is dead. So they're saying, if you don't have works, you don't have faith. No, it's if you don't have faith, you won't have works. So if we don't see the works that you're doing because of your faith, it lets you assume, that faith isn't there to begin with. So they're saying works is the root of faith when actually it's works grow out of faith.
Yeah, exactly. Like faith is like the seed, and then it's gonna grow up. And I like that. I like that analogy. Grows into works.
Like that. I think anyone who's like
drops fruit on people,
which I like doing. I like this topic right now because this is a soteriology thing. But I think anyone who has truly accepted Christ has the Holy Spirit living in them as a temple. You're gonna see the fruit of that naturally. They're not gonna live such a way where they can blend in the world. They would forever, like even if they try to go back to the world, they would just be outcasts in that.
And I've seen that.
Yeah, so I'm always. It's usually with people who are raised in church that when they go away, and we're like, oh well, it's probably just like a phase, or they've gone away but they'll come back. It's like, well, let's not assume that just because they were raised in church and they came to that altar that one time,
right?
Yeah, you got to come to the altar at least twice. That's how you know God chose you.
Keep coming till you know for sure.
Something like that. Okay.
It's just something I've thought about before because a lot of my ministry is dealing with people who weren't raised in church at all, like who were raised in another religion or with no religion. And for them, like when they decide to give their lives to Christ, you start seeing changes so rapidly. Like when they're it's intense. And so when people are living like super ungodly, evil lives, and like they were raised in church, they're like, well, I said the prayer. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm not going to sit here and judge their salvation because I don't have that authority. But I'm looking at it, I'm like, I would imagine if the Holy Spirit was living inside of you, there would be some something I could see.
Right. Yeah. And I like, even people raised in church who don't leave the church, sometimes you wonder because like they're good people, they don't like do any of the major bad stuff, but you still don't really see any fruit. Like maybe they're not serving in the church, they're not reaching out, they're just kind of there. So it's not just like, not even just like leaving the church and doing all kinds of bad stuff, but even the simple absence of that fruit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, not
That makes
bad
sense.
fruit, but the absence of fruit entirely.
Right, yeah.
Mm.
And they're just a boring tree.
That's
It's a
such a
boring tree.
on it.
And then when the winds come along, it just.
If I'm
Because it
ever
doesn't have any fruit holding it down.
if I'm ever preaching,
Yes.
that's gonna be my
Yes,
new
because the
turn.
weight of the fruit holds it to the ground.
It's gonna be my new turn to call out people if I'm ever preaching. I was like, you guys aren't even a dead tree. You're a boring tree.
I'm gonna have to use that with my youth group from now on.
Please
Stop
do.
being a boring tree.
Don't be boring.
Group.
Oh, so many good analogies in this episode.
Yeah.
Well, do we have final thoughts? I feel like we've been doing final thoughts for like 5 minutes or more.
Yeah.
The only
I-
final thought to our final thoughts I think we should do is we've each argued our position, so maybe we should tell them what our actual position is. Because we didn't necessarily, well, we kind of did, didn't we?
I've been arguing my actual position for the last 4 episodes, so I'm exempt.
Yeah,
Yes, true.
I'm not a crazy weird Calvinist though.
not a hyper Calvinist. Not
No.
a Westboro. Not a Westboro. Malloy, what about you? What is your actual official Malloyan
Maloyan.
stance?
Well, yes, well, I've enjoyed reading and learning about all this. I've actually, throughout most of my years as a Christian, never held a very strong interest in this topic. Like going into this was very much like, oh, cool, I get to invest time in something I never really cared about. Mainly for that reason, because it's been such a source of argument and division in the church when it really shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And so mine's kind of a hodgepodge of views because I am in the once saved always saved camp, and but I guess which Christina would say that this is the Calvinistic view, but I would lean to the Molinistic view about depravity, where there is a limited, one article referred to it as a soft libertarian view of free will, where there is a certain number of choices, a certain amount of freedom given to us. Either way, it's hodgepodge. It probably would be more of a thing if I was involved in more of the intellectual side of Christianity, like I was involved in those debates more. But so often, my calling and my work is dealing with people who've never even heard to begin with, and so we never even
Right.
domain. So
Actually, to say my views are closer to Molinism. Not straight up. I mean, I've got kind of like you do that first point. You know, the whole free will thing. I got that, but once saved, always saved. All that fun jazz. Although it has been fun bashing. I mean, explaining the position of modern Arminianists. Guys are weird. You need to read the Bible. I don't know where this stuff came from,
Repent.
and I need help finding it, and you guys need help. Full stop. Anyway, classical Arminianists though have been very entertaining to read. Going back, I even read some Jacob Arminius, some Thomas Aquinas, some fancy stuff like that.
how is Aquinas?
Huh?
Is it Aquinas or Aquinas?
Is it Aquinas? It's my homeboy Tommy.
Aquinas.
It's Tommy. So that guy. So it's been a lot of fun to research. I would agree, and it's a lot more in depth when you research it yourself than when you just listen to your college professor talk about it for 30 seconds before moving into altar calls. It's really what he did. He was like, "Hey, by the way, Calvinism, Arminianism, and altar calls," and he spent like 3 hours there. Because he's like, everybody knows what it is, right? And I was the only one that said no. So we had to sit there. And he got into a lot of details like, wait, invitation, right? Yes. And people just go up front for it and pray? Yes. Okay, you could have said that 30 minutes ago. Dr. Baskin. Gotta love the guy.
So, for my final thoughts, I'm just going to bounce off what Matt said. It is very interesting to read about this stuff for yourself. So, like, if you're watching this and you're interested in this stuff, I really encourage you to go read some of it. Like, Calvin's Institutes, there's some good stuff in there. Go read what he has to say on prayer. It's great, no matter what side you hold. There's good stuff in there. Good theology. What?
I said, but Google the Institutes, though, because an actual full volume set's incredibly expensive.
Yeah, they're long. You might not want to read the whole thing. Maybe you do. Like, if you do, that's cool. I've got some cool books. I can't remember who wrote them right now, but it's a set of books. There's two of them. One of them is called For Calvinism, and one of them is called Against Calvinism. And I haven't gotten all the way through them yet, but what I've read so far, they show both views very fairly.
Michael Horton.
Is that who wrote it?
Michael Horton and Roger E. Olson.
Okay, yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, they're good. Yeah, I'm sure there's lots and lots of resources out there. Go read Arminius. Do your own research. It's fun.
Yay. Get off the internet. You watched 4 weeks worth of these videos.
Or stay on the internet and look up Calvin's Institutes.
Oh, the internet.
Vitamin D, man.
Just take your laptop outside.
I promise.
That's
My gray skin tone is from the fluorescent lights. You need to go outside.
All right, that's my final thoughts. Do some research. It's fun.
Everyone, thank you for tuning in to this series. We'll do more later. I have to go to Cambodia for a couple weeks to go to an unreached village.
Which means me and Matt are going to get on here and argue with Patrick over something.
I'm in.
I'll probably say nothing about Calvinism or anything related to these people because they have not even heard of Jesus. So
probably a wise decision.
My friend, the witch doctor. Never mind.
Go to a house and be like, so do you think people are saved or do they have to choose it? And they're like, what are you even talking about?
What do you mean saved? I don't know what you're...
Saved from what?
In whatever language they speak in Cambodia.
Saved from what I'm about to tell you about.
Flip tables. Hit money changers with whips. Free goats.
Do it. Object lesson.
This is how Jesus did this.
Oh, that's going to go over well.
Jesus, man, he was scary. I don't know about him.
Terrifying.
Okay, guys. Thank you for
tuning in
for 4 weeks, unless you jumped in on this.
Not with our stupid humors.
Yes, awesome memes and references, and yeah.
Heresy stamps.
Heresy! Okay. Have a great night, everybody. Bye.